divided. We're Edna office is in area 2, and we have offices in Angleton, Edna, and Georgetown. Rick Florence is our area director. That would be his contact information. The Edna office covers Calhoun, DeWitt, Goliad, Gonzales, Jackson, Lavaca, and Victoria, whereas the Angleton office picks up Austin, Brazoria, Colorado, Fort Bend, Galveston, Matagorda, and Wharton. And then our Georgetown office does Bastrop, Blanco, Burnett, Caldwell, Fayette, Hayes, Lee, and Llano, Travis, and Williamson. So that, and I told Angelique that after the slideshow, after the presentation, if anybody wants the slideshow so they have all this contact information, that's perfectly acceptable and will be great. The more people that know about it, the better. I included the Area 7 office over in Seguin because they abut us over there at Karnes County. And so if you're over that way in any of those counties, this is how you get in touch with them. I don't, Mr. Valdez is the area director over there. And then Area 8 also abuts us because they pick up Aransas, B, Nueces, Refugio, and San Patricio counties. But all of our information is on the web out there, so you could find us anywhere that in numerous ways. Like I said, rural development's a national program where actually are the United States Department of Agriculture. It's not just our name. People sometimes think we just call ourselves that, but we're civil servants and work for the federal government. So we have the Rural Business Cooperative Service, the Rural Housing Service, and the Rural Utility Service. We have over 40 different programs. We do things with utilities, water systems, sewer systems, electrical, broadband, telecommunications. Then we're going to talk in depth about the housing programs in a little bit. We also have the community facilities that are for nonprofits, cities and municipalities. They can do things like city halls, fire stations, libraries, fire trucks, ambulances, police stations, police cars, all types of things that are vital infrastructure for rural communities. And then we have the business programs that allow businesses to expand and create jobs in rural areas. One of the major things we have is a housing preservation grant. It actually falls under our multifamily housing program, but it's a grant that towns and communities can get, and it's kind of a pass-through grant. They get the money and then they can pass it on either as a grant or a low interest loan to actual homeowners to repair or rehab their rehab housing in various low and very low income areas. The recipients provide grant, I already said that, and the rental property owners can also receive this money from the grant recipients. The funding comes out annually on a NOFA. Homeowners are not eligible for this as the direct recipient. They're the ultimate recipient. The city or town passes it through them and gives it to the people depending what their scope of work was when they applied for the grant from us. Then they decide who's going to get it in their area. The good thing about this is we have a single family housing repair loan and grant that is for homeowners, and it can be used in conjunction with this. So like, let's say the city of Cuero got the housing preservation grant and said they were going to give it to low income people to put new roofs on. Well, they could then come to us and actually try to get a loan and grant themselves to work in conjunction with that, and that way have more spending dollars to make repairs to their homes. This is for more information, visit our website. We also have a guaranteed home loan, and that's for people in the higher income brackets, the moderate income versus the low or very low. And that's for people, they actually apply with mortgage brokers, banks, and things like that. And the Department of Agriculture just guarantees it, pretty much like a VA guaranteed loan. The benefit to this is that it allows those private sector lenders to put more money on the street. It lets them make loans that perhaps they wouldn't have made otherwise without ours guaranteeing it. There's a link on our website to the approved lenders list, but pretty much everybody does them now, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. So you could basically just start with your own bank and just ask if they do the rural development guaranteed home loans. It is 100% financing, just like our direct program is. There's no down payment required. You do have to pay some closing costs, but the closing costs can be incorporated into the loan if there's room in the loan for it. It's prevailing interest rates, whatever the bank is charging at the time. So this is another really good program for people that perhaps don't qualify for our direct program and have, better credit scores and make more money, but they just can't get that down payment together. And I talked briefly before about our single family home loans and grants. This lets people make repairs to their homes that they own already. They have to be in the very low income category. And if they're 62 years of age or older, they may be eligible for a grant to do things that improves the safety of their homes as far as like ADH accessibility, structural issues or whatever. And in the state of Texas, that's up to $10,000 worth of grant money they can get if they qualify. The grants don't have to be paid back. It's unless something happens in the first 3 years, then we ask it to get paid back. And this can work in conjunction with if the city or town has that housing preservation grant that would allow them to get more money to be able to effect repairs to their homes. And this is the meat of it. I'm going pretty fast. Am I going too fast?
No, I think you're doing fine.
Okay. I have a tendency to get wrapped up and just keep going. I apologize. So the single family housing direct loan is what I do day in and day out. That's my main program area. It's for people in the low and very low income categories to be able to purchase homes. There's no down payment. It's 100% financing. You might have to pay the closing costs. And sometimes we can include those if there's room in the loan. There's no prepayment penalties. And we do have payment assistance with this program. You can buy or build. We do have a construction to perm options, and that we would just oversee the construction and pay draws for the contractor as he's building the home, and then we convert it to the permanent loan internally. There's not like a second close or anything. We just do that internally. There's an eligibility assessment tool out there on our website too that you can go through and put your income in and your debt and determine if the program thinks you're a good candidate or not. The applicants have to be without decent, safe, and sanitary housing. You can't currently own a home. You have to be unable to obtain a loan from other resources. You have to agree to occupy the property as your primary residence. You have to have the legal capacity to incur a loan obligation. You have to meet the citizenship or eligible non-citizen requirements, and you can't be suspended or barred from working with the federal government. This is important, that little gold area where it's around Victoria. That's the ineligible area in Victoria County. Everywhere else in the county is eligible. It's just that little section kind of outside, mostly inside the Zacklands Parkway, except for that little area going out past the mall there at 77. So the rest of Victoria County is eligible. It's just that the inside city proper of Victoria is not. Then the other counties that we have, all of the whole county is eligible. And it's based on population density, more or less. It's cities and towns of over 20,000 are not eligible. This is the income limits, and I just picked up the Edna area office ones because that's my realm of responsibility. So really, like for Victoria County, a household from 1 to 4 can make up to $55,450 annually gross income and be eligible for our program. And then for a household of 5 to 8, they can make up to 73,200. So sometimes people are put off by this when we say low and very low, but it's more workforce housing. We're just really trying to help people that are out there working, that are both people are working or one person's making decent money, perhaps have a little bit of debt, but just can't save enough to get that down payment together. But everything else, they're perfectly qualified to get a home. So that's where we fill that niche of that is 100% financing. And these income limits, they're out there on our website too for the other counties. So I put this in there so that when Angelique shares the slideshow with you, you'd have all the links to all of our different web pages to be able to go through and get more information. There is an applicant orientation video that explains a lot about our program that's very informative, and it has our income and our handbook. And so there's all kinds of information available to you to determine or help other people apply because it really is a good program. So we don't have a minimum credit score. We like to see a 640 or better. If you don't have a 640 or better, we have to do what's called an in-depth credit analysis, and that's when we start looking if you have collections or things you haven't paid or write-offs and charge-offs. But if you have a 640 or better, if you haven't had a foreclosure or a bankruptcy or delinquent federal debt, we consider that eligible credit without any further review. Then we just look at your repayment income and to make the determination on whether you're going to be eligible for the program or not. We look at income in several different ways. First off, it is gross income, and we look at your annual gross income for all adult household members, and we make a determination if you fall under the low income bracket or less to determine if you're even eligible for our program. And then we look at the income of the applicants, the people that are actually going to be signing the promissory note and responsible for repaying the loan. And we look at how that by that
Yeah.
number, we determine how much you'd be able to lend, how much you'd be able to borrow. I'm sorry, did I?
No, I think somebody accidentally unmuted themselves.
Oh, okay. And so that's the biggest thing, that it's gross income. And so we look at all the adult household members to determine if you're eligible for the program, and then for the people that are actually the applicants to determine the repayment income. I mentioned subsidy or payment assistance. I'll kind of switch back and forth what term I use. Certain cases, you can be eligible for payment assistance, and that's kind of comes off of your income and how much debt you have and how much loan you are eligible for. And in those cases, like right now, our interest rate is 2.5. It's a fixed interest rate. Our typical term is 33 years. We can go out to 38. But if you're eligible for payment assistance, what the government does is we pay the difference between 2.5 and 1%. And so that 1.5% of interest goes and sits over in what we call the subsidy recapture account. And it just sits there. It does not accrue any interest of its own. But as you start making more money as you're in the home, it kind of goes away. The interest rate will never go over whatever our note rate is when you close, which, like I said, right now is 2.5, and it can never go below 1%. So, because sometimes people are like, well, I need more payment assistance. 1% is as low as it can go, and it'll never go over what it was closed at. It used to be a much more beneficial help, more help. I don't know how to say it, more help when interest rates were like at 5 and 6 and 7%, because that was a big chunk, because we still subsidize it down to 1%. So it really allowed people that perhaps didn't have the money to pay those interest rates to get into homes. So does anybody have any questions at this time? I went really fast. I'm sorry.
That was really good. Thank you so much. I was wondering how people were gonna, because I think it's kind of hard to determine, try to calculate yourself what's considered at the median. So but you said that there was a tool there that helps people, um, determine whether or not they're eligible. So that's awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Pat?
This is Johanna. My question was about the non-citizens requirements. Can you elaborate on that?
We basically do a search on them. They have to be non-resident aliens. They have to have their card and be admitted. So you have to either be a citizen or you have to have your visa or whatever. It's one of the two. And basically, we do a search through the database, through the save search, and determine if they're eligible to apply for the program. So you have to be documented, basically. You have to be going through the citizenship requirements.
Thanks. I think I see a hand up.
And I was going to mention Johanna is going to be helping with asking questions. So if you have anything written down or if you're going to raise your hand, she'll pop in and help with that. So Felice, you had a question?
Yes. I heard you say that there is no credit score limit, but then I also heard that a 640 is a good chance. So could you just Please, like, reiterate that, please.
Okay, because with the direct loan program, you're applying directly with the Department of Agriculture, and we underwrite the loans ourselves, and the department is we're lending the money. So a 640 or better with no significant delinquency, which is a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, or a delinquent federal debt, is considered acceptable credit, and we don't have to do any more analysis. If you have, let's say, a 600, then we have to look at it. Is it just that you have a lot of credit, don't have any credit, or is there something derogatory or negative on your credit report? Let's say you had a car accident and you're unable to work for a certain period of time, and so you ended up with some collections. As long as we can verify that it was a certain incident, and it wasn't this ongoing thing. It was this bad stuff happened, so I have this bad stuff, and I've gotten it cleaned up, and I've reestablished credit. I just haven't had a chance to pay off all those bad things. We can make a determination based on the overall case file to go ahead and give a credit waiver and move forward with it. So we don't say no just because it's below a 640. We look at more factors and make a determination based on the whole application. Does that kind of help?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Dot, did you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is Dot Falcon. I'm from Driscoll Health Plan. I was calling on the USDA 504 home repair assistance. Is that only, do you still have that? Is that only for communities less than 10,000 population? Or is it for 20,000?
Ooh, I know that everywhere in our service area, other than the city of Victoria, that ineligible area I showed you is eligible. So I can only speak to that. I might have misquoted the population density, but for the 5 counties I cover, the only ineligible area is that city of Victoria.
City of Victoria.
It's like all of Jackson County is eligible, all of Goliad, all of Gonzales, Calhoun is eligible.
Okay, because I had an instance with Rockport, the city of, I mean, to do it for the, I know that's another area.
Yeah, Rockport, and so they may have a higher population. I'd have to look at the map, but if you go out there on one of the sites that was listed, you can put in a specific address, and it'll to tell you if the property is eligible or not eligible.
Oh, okay, so I can do that on the website?
Yes, ma'am. But so the property was in the city of Rockport. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So and unfortunately, I don't know because
Okay.
I'm not that familiar with that area. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I can, since I can go on the website and put in the address, I can check. But I did have an issue trying to get the home repair assistance for that.
Now, sometimes, I mean, I kind of just went very lightly with the requirements. There's numerous requirements for getting the 504 grant. The person has to own the home. Like with a manufactured home, they have to own the home and the land it sits on. We have to be able to enact all the repairs. Like if you go in and the roof is bad and the electrical's bad and the plumbing's bad, we have to be able to fix it all because we have to be able to bring it up to a decent sanitary safe status. So it's not like, because we can't come in and just fix the electrical and then have their plumbing still be being bad, because then we haven't met our standards of decent, safe, and sanitary. So there might have been other things going on other than just the population, is all I'm saying. So, and without specific case file, I wouldn't know.
Well, that's interesting to know. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Looks like we have another question. Kisha, do you can unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Kesha Gothier. I'm with Workforce Solutions Golden Crescent. And I was going back to their credit score. Okay, so if it's under the 640 and y'all are looking at it, how much will it affect y'all's decision for like medical or student loans?
Did you say they have a 640 or they don't?
No, they don't.
They don't have a 640. It just depends. Student loan, because we do look at student loans, and if they're delinquent on a student loan, that's considered being delinquent on a federal debt most times because the loans are through the government. So that would be a significant impact. If they medical, it depends on if it's an ongoing situation where they just feel like it's a medical and I don't have to pay it, that can start to have a more of an impact on, instead of, yeah, I had this situation, I was in the hospital, I thought my insurance paid, they didn't pay, I'm going through this, I've set up a payment plan and I'm trying to pay it back, well, then we can go forward. It really is a case by case, big picture, what else is going on and what kind of justification they can give us as far as if it was a, isolated incident and it's been removed and now there's not going to be any more credit problems.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Does
Now,
anybody
this
else?
is all, I have to go back and say though, this is just the direct program. The guaranteed program, the one that goes through the lenders and the banks, their criteria apply for whatever they have for their lending criteria. That's the bank's issue. And then they just come to us for the guarantee. So this is only the 502 direct program where we're actually making the loan and we're advancing the funds.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. Pat, did anybody else have any questions? And again, if you don't think of anything right away, we're going to have another question and answer part at the end. So.
And my email was there at the front. So it's just patricia.rachels@usda.gov. Feel free to email me with any specific questions and I will try to address them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pat. Let me go ahead and you can hit on your share content here. You can hit stop share and then.
Oh, sure I can.
We
You
talked
say
about
that
how to
so
share, but we
easily.
didn't-
You say that like it's just, just do this.
We talked about how to share, but not how to share. How to not share. So
Did that work?
Yes, it did. Awesome. Okay. So up next we have Teresa Morales. She's with the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and she should be popping up here soon. Let me see. Teresa. Are you with us, Teresa? There you are.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just great. Thanks.
Good. All right. So it was great to see USDA on this panel. The Texas Department of Housing, we do a lot of work with the Temple USDA office, and there's a lot of programs that USDA offers that work with the Housing Tax Credit Program. What I thought I would do for purposes of this presentation, not knowing entirely the background and kind of who the audience is, was really to keep it high level and kind of talk broadly about the programs, specifically the multifamily programs that we offer. And then if there are specific questions that folks have about a project they may have in mind or needs in their community, then maybe we can handle that. You can feel free to give me a call or an email, and then I can go into a lot more of the weeds. Similar to USDA, with this being a federal program, there are a lot of requirements that have to be met. And so rather than get the audience lost in the nuances of those, I just thought I would kind of keep it high level. So the Housing Tax Credit Program, it's a federal program that allows private developers to build affordable and workforce housing that would serve individuals and families that are earning below the area median income. What happens is developers approach TDHCA, developers find sites, they figure out the target population to be served, whether it's going to be a family project or if it's going to target seniors. Developers figure out what the unit mix of that project is going to be. Is it going to be 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, a combination thereof? And then what the income levels are to be served. So are you going to have a property that is entirely serving households at 60% of the area median income? Are you going to include some 50% households and some 60s, maybe incorporate some market rate units? Those are all decisions that rest with the developer and really knowing the area with which they're going to build. And so they kind of package all of that together and then present it to TDHCA. As far as eligible activities, you can do new construction. So if you have a piece of dirt somewhere and you want to start from the ground up, that is certainly eligible. And then also the acquisition and rehab of existing projects. So if you have a property that may already be affordable and it needs some improvements, you can certainly apply to TDHCA under this housing tax credit program and receive funding in order to make those improvements to those units. So TDHCA is the state allocating agency for the housing tax credits. There are two different tax credit programs. One is the competitive program, and the other one is the non-competitive program. And the one that I am specifically talking about is the non-competitive program. With the non-competitive housing tax credit program, you also apply for private activity bonds or tax exempt bonds. Again, another federal source. And it's both of these funding sources together that help provide the financing for your particular project. In exchange for the funding that you receive, there are restrictions that we'll place on the property. They run with the property itself or with the land, not the actual owner, for a minimum of 30 years. So you have a minimum 30-year affordability period where you are required to maintain those restrictions. The ownership of the actual property can change within that time frame, but the restrictions stay. There are some minimum program requirements, things that we're looking for from the very beginning. A lot of these are just considered some of our threshold criteria, which includes providing some common amenities, some certain amenities that are within every single unit. There's also a requirement that you provide tenant supportive services. And again, that's long-term for that entire affordability period. The qualified allocation plan or our rule book goes into a lot more detail as to what these common amenities are. Owners can select which amenities they want to provide for their particular project. And in addition to that, the tenant supportive services, we provide owners with flexibility. Depending on what the tenant profile is, you kind of figure out what your tenants need, what your tenants want, and then provide those services to them. And again, the minimum requirements also include keeping those rents affordable for that entire 30-year affordability period. TDHCA does monitor because we have the funding in the deal. We are required to monitor these properties. We go out at least once every 3 years to do physical on-site inspections and making sure that there's no health and safety violations. And then we also perform audits of the files, making sure that all of the households are eligible households and that they're not earning more than what the median income is, that you're not charging more rent than what you are allowed to. Under the tax credit and the bond program, there is a minimum unit size, and that is 16 units. So again, we're talking about multifamily projects that are at least 16 units. If you do have a project that small, it could be that the tax exempt bond and the housing tax credit program may not be the best fit for that particular project, but maybe go our direct loan route. So another funding source that we offer on multifamily projects include use of our direct loan funds, and those have their own different terms, but again, the same requirements regarding affordability and stuff. It's just kind of figuring out what is the project that you have in mind and what funding source might better fit that particular project, because it's not really a one size fits all. With respect to the tax exempt bond program and housing tax credit program, those two funding sources, what we see is those types of projects are normally in the more major metropolitan areas, and those are larger developments. And the reason being is because the costs associated with issuing those bonds is so great, because you have different lawyers, you have a lot of different legal documents, you have a lot more things that kind of comprise that transaction that raise those pre-development costs, if you will. And so to achieve economies of scale, usually it's better if those types of projects are much larger. So again, the minimum unit size is 16, but on the bond and the credit side, we mostly see about 150 units or more. If you are looking at a lower size or a smaller size, it could be that our competitive tax credit program may be a better fit. Again, it's just sort of taking a look at the programs that we have and the type of project that you have in mind and seeing which is the best route to go. I briefly mentioned the qualified allocation plan, or the QAP. That's sort of our Bible or our rule book that really governs the housing tax credit program. And so it goes into a lot of detail about eligibility requirements, threshold requirements, things that we're looking for on every property. It also goes into detail about what kinds of applicants could be considered ineligible, what type of developments could be considered ineligible. And so it's important that anyone kind of starting out exploring the housing tax credit program, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at this qualified allocation plan. It is a set of rules that we adopt on an annual basis. And so it kind of governs the program for that entire calendar year. On the tax credit side, these applications are accepted on a monthly basis. Our competitive tax credit program, it has a more fixed application cycle where applications are due, pre-applications are due in January, full applications are due in March, and then we make awards in July. On the non-competitive tax credit side, that includes that bond financing, those applications can come in monthly and we can review and make awards on a monthly basis. So when an application comes in, some things that we're looking for, again, it has to do with our general eligibility criteria, some of our threshold criteria. Another aspect of our review process involves underwriting. And so we're looking to make sure that this project is going to be feasible for the long term. And, we're looking at certain parameters, again, that we have within our rules based on how that transaction is structured. So we're looking at operating expenses, we're looking at debt coverage requirements. And so, again, it's important to note that TDHCA does not set what those loan requirements are. With the housing tax credit program and with the bond program, what you're doing is you're shopping your own deal to equity investors and to lenders who want to invest in your project. And so they are going to be quoting, certain loan terms, interest rates, amortization, all of that kind of stuff. And like I said, you kind of package all of that together, your financing structure, your development team, and then you submit all of that to TDHCA, and then we review. In addition to the underwriting and program requirements, we are also performing what's called a previous participation review. And what that means is we take a look at all of the properties. If you have received funding from TDHCA before, then you would disclose all of that on your application. And then we are looking at your portfolio. We're looking at all of those existing properties to make sure that there's no outstanding issues of non-compliance, things that haven't been resolved. If you are partnering with someone, we're also looking at their portfolio. So again, you're going to, as part of your application, tell us who you are and all of the principles that are going to be involved with your entity. And then if you're partnering with someone like a housing authority or, an other instrumentality of the city, we want to know who those individuals are. Do they have any existing properties that are in the TDHCA portfolio? And so we're going to be looking at the portfolio as a combined to see if there's any outstanding issues. We do get a lot of folks who have never been in this program before. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming at just all of the requirements. And this is just on the front end. This is just getting an application together. Keep in mind that as overwhelming as that may seem, it kind of carries you through because you have to go through construction, you have to go through placement and service. And then you know, like I said, you have to go through the long-term compliance monitoring and those restrictions and making sure that that property continues to operate in accordance with what our compliance requirements are. So what we often advise is if you are new, find someone who may have participated in the program before, kind of partner up with them, shadow them, and kind of go through that process with them as part of your first deal. Get that under your belt before kind of venturing out on your own. We don't prescribe who partners are. We're looking to see that you do have some kind of development experience. Those are one of the requirements in our QAP. But again, if it's your first transaction, there are a number of applicants who partner up with other entities to kind of guide them through this particular process. There is a lot of information on our website. It's www.tdhca.state.tx.us. And there's a multifamily programs section that talks about, you know, the competitive tax credit program, the non-competitive, which is what I'm primarily focused on today. And my contact information is on there. So if you're looking for specific information about a project that you have in mind, feel free to peruse our website. And if that doesn't get you the information that you're looking for, you can certainly contact me. And that's all I had.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Teresa. I did invite a few developers to see if they were interested in the area because they'd been developing around this area, and I'm not sure if any of them came through. But does anybody? Oh, I do see there's a question. Jeff, you can unmute yourself and ask Teresa your question.
Thank you, Teresa. Jeff Connell with Gulf Bend Center. Are the tax credit available? You mentioned low income and senior citizens, but what about those that have disability income and a credit for that apartment unit or complex?
Absolutely. So first of all, the program does serve persons with disabilities. And in terms of income, for that unit, that kind of goes into what our compliance staff checks on the back end. If there is disability income, if there's SSI, if there, you know, whatever those benefits are that can factor into paying the rent on that unit, that's certainly a part of it. But yes, you can have seniors, you can have persons with disabilities that are eligible for this particular program.
Is there any other questions for Teresa? And again, if you think of anything towards the end, we're going to have a question and answer. And, you know, if she's not able to make it the whole time, we'll definitely get you the answer right away as soon as we can. So looks like, oh, we got somebody else asking. Christina, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Teresa what your question.
Yeah, I just need the website again. I didn't get it all written down, please.
Sure, it's www.tdhca.state, and that's spelled out STATE.tx.us.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much, Teresa. That was very informative, and we're going to have, I believe we put the website on our chat here, so if anybody wants to look at that, it's been placed in our chat spot. So, all right, so with our next, we've got Gina Bonnert coming up. She's with our Texas Veterans Leadership Program, and she's going to be telling us all about that. Hi, Gina. Oh, I
Good morning. How is
morning.
everyone today?
Awesome. Great. So, what do you got for us today?
Well, I'll bring up a slideshow. I won't be taking up as much time. I don't have as many amazingly awesome services to offer, so that's really incredible. I've learned a lot today, which has been great. So I will go ahead and bring up my screen, and let me switch this to presentation mode. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. I am Gina Bonert with the Texas Veterans Leadership Program. We are a small division that actually falls underneath the Texas Workforce Commission. And I'm going to go over just a couple of things, like what the Texas Veterans Leadership Program is, the veterans that we serve, what we do, and then I'm also going to provide some examples of resources and referrals. So I work as a veteran resource and referral specialist. So essentially what that means is I do outreach to find veterans who need assistance. And then I also do outreach to service providers, whether they be local, federal, or state. And if they are service providers for specifically just veterans, or if they're open to community as well. I assist with building those bonds and building my network so that when a veteran comes to me and needs assistance, or if I meet a veteran who is needing assistance, then I know where to refer them, where to send them, or where to get that assistance that they need. So any of the services that I provide, they can range from anything from employment to medical needs to veteran benefits directly from the VA, could be training, medical care, mental health counseling, pretty much anything that you can think of that pertains to the whole person. And then I also coordinate a chain of volunteer services as well. So this is a obviously not meant for you to read on the screen because there are a lot of resources in here, but I put this in here as an example so that at the end of this presentation, when the slides are shared with you all, you can see an example of some of the resources and referrals that I make for veterans. So I'll just kind of highlight a few of them. So as you know, COVID-19 has changed everything for everyone. So prior to COVID-19, a lot of the work that I did were in reference to providing resources, whether it be like rental assistance, getting someone connected with different grants that are available at the local level or state level, and whether that be just a veteran specific grant or sometimes a community grant. So I did a lot of that in the beginning, helped a lot of homeless veterans find housing and that kind of stuff. Then after COVID-19 happened, it seemed like things changed. And I've spent a lot more work on assisting with employment. And so that's kind of how the job has changed since COVID-19. So now I do a lot more work with employment. I work very closely with the Workforce Solutions offices as well as other veteran specific sources such as the VR&E program with the VA, which is the Voc Rehab, or used to be called Voc Rehab and Employment. Now it's Veteran Readiness and Employment, as well as with the Texas Veterans Commission, the career advisors. So some of the examples on here is working with the VA, assisting veterans in getting their GI Bill. And it says Voc Rehab. I need to update my slide. It should be VR&E, same acronym, different words. So that's Veteran Readiness and Employment. I provide referrals for getting a disability claim filed. I also work with the HUD-VASH program. So I know here we're speaking specifically about housing programs. So the VA has a phenomenal program, and I'm probably going to mess up the acronym, but HUD, so the Urban Housing and Urban Development is what that part stands for. And then the VASH, it's Veteran Assistance and Veteran Assistance Services and Housing, I think, is what the VASH stands for. That program is phenomenal for some of our homeless veterans. If they qualify, I'm sorry, I forgot to silence my phone. If a veteran qualifies, that can provide them access to a Section 8 voucher, which is going to help them get into affordable housing. Then we partner with the HUD-VASH counselor and assist on the employment piece. As part of the HUD-VASH program, the veteran does need to either be enrolled in school and going to school, working towards a career, or they need to be working. That's part of the program requirement. So the HUD-VASH program is phenomenal. I also work with Endeavors. Community Action is kind of more in the Coastal Bend area as opposed to up in the Golden Crescent area. But Endeavors is in both areas, and they are also great at assisting veterans getting back into housing if they are currently homeless, or if they are at risk of eviction. They can also help with those services, and those are specific to veterans. So I also work with the Veteran Service Organization. So if someone has a specific need that I can't find a service for, or any way of satisfying that need, the veteran service organizations are phenomenal. Most of the time, if they have some funds available, they're able to provide funds, and it is a one-time basis most of the time, but they are able to provide funds that can hopefully help satisfy that need for that veteran. So that's pretty much what I have to share. Here is my contact information and the areas that I serve. So I do cover 19 counties. So I cover the Coastal Bend and the Golden Crescent. I used to do a lot of travel. I used to be up in the Golden Crescent area all the time, specifically in Victoria. From there, I could kind of make appointments and go where needed. But travel has been suspended since COVID-19, but now that the state is opening soon, that might change. I may get to travel again. So we'll just have to see how all that plays out. So there's my contact information. And again, you'll have this slideshow at the end today. I know Angelique was going to share that.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I'll just open it up to any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for her? And thank you for that, Gina, because I think many of us know, a veteran, that's going to need some services at some point. So this is very helpful. It looks like we have Dot. Dot, did you want to ask a question? She's got her hand up. You just unmute yourself. Yeah, she was muted. I think that.
Okay, now I think I unmuted again.
There you go.
About veteran funeral expenses, would they go through you if a family was needing that, or through someone else?
So most of the time, the county veteran service officers are going to be the ones that handle that. But anytime there's anything that relates to veterans, you can always send them to me, especially if you're not sure where to send them. You can always send them to me, and I'll make sure that I get the answers for them, because I do have a good network that I can reach out to, because if I don't have the answers, someone from my team will have the answer for that. So absolutely, if there's anything. And the list that I showed on that previous slide, it's definitely not an all-inclusive list. I've been doing this for almost 2 years now, and I've helped hundreds of veterans in the short amount of time that I've been in position. And I still get phone calls. I'm like, oh, that's a new one. And so then I dive in and look to find a resource or something to satisfy that need or answer that question. And then the network in both areas is very solid. So if I don't have an answer to someone and don't immediately know someone in my network will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have questions for Miss Gina? And again, if you don't have anything right away and you think of something, you'll be able to ask at the end of the program. So,
yeah,
well,
so
thank you
feel free to call or email. My office number is listed on the business card, but just skip that. Just call the cell phone, because that phone is with me all the time. So I'm hoping to be traveling again, and as soon as I'm traveling, the cell phone's always the best place to get a hold of me. My office phone number is supposed to forward to my cell phone, and it does most of the time, but every once in a while something is missed. So call the cell phone, just don't worry about the office.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was very helpful, very informative. Let me go ahead, and we've got, again, if you have any questions, we can take them at the end of the event as well. So So up next, we have Nick Thompson. He is with the Texas Homeless Network, and he's going to be speaking on the 2021 legislative session and how it affects our homeless. Nick, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Let me pull up the presentation real quick. Can y'all see the presentation okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be here with all of you this morning. So I will be talking about this legislative session and the work that we do at Texas Homeless Network, and introducing y'all to who we are as an agency, just in case you haven't heard from us or been in a meeting with us before. My name is Nick Thompson. I'm the statewide initiatives manager at Texas Homeless Network. So I'll speak a little bit first just about who we are, what the session is looking like, and then where we go from here. I know that these presentations are pretty short, so it may seem like I'm going through this a little bit quickly, but I want to make sure that we have enough time at the end to answer any of your questions that you may have, as well as questions that you have for the other presenters today. What is THN? We are a statewide agency that leads communities in Texas so that homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. So that is what leads all of the work that we do as an agency. We have a really, really small advocacy team. It's mostly just me and our president and CEO. The vast majority of our other staff work as the lead agency for the Balance of State COC, which covers most of the Golden Crescent area. And everything in orange that you see on the map, we are the lead agency for that. The other areas are the other continuums of care that are not within the Balance of State. So typically more of our urban areas like Travis County, Harris County, Dallas-Fort Worth, those types of things too. So we do work with the other continuums of care. It's just not something that we lead and organize as an agency. And for our statewide advocacy, so this is really just something that me and our president and CEO, Eric Samuels, do. The vast majority of our agency is working on other things, but I'm really happy to be able to share with you today about what's going on with this legislative session. So there's a lot of questions still up almost halfway through this legislative session so far, but there are a few things that we do know. So we are facing about $1 billion shortfall as a state. So we are, the state is looking at which programs that they can cut or continue with existing funding. We know that nothing is off the table for budget cuts, but we also know the needs facing all of our communities are really, really great right now. And especially with this new recovery bill moving through Congress, we know that the state is thinking and relying on the prospect of continued federal support to get us through this COVID-19 crisis and also the economic recession that followed it. There are also a lot of things that we don't know, and these number of bills probably need to be updated since when I updated them at the end of last week too. So we have a lot of bills that have been filed in the House and the Senate. The question here is how many of those will actually be heard? We don't know exactly what testimony looks like. We know that for a lot of it, it's going to be invitation only, and we've started doing some of that as well. Some of them are also open to the public. Most legislators, to my knowledge, are meeting with constituents and agencies like all of us virtually. So that is one barrier that doesn't exist in this legislative session, is that we are able to schedule Zoom calls with folks, whereas normally we may have to have people come to Austin in order to meet with those staff members. Capitol Access is also really, really different. They have a COVID testing center right out front, and then also the added safety concerns following January 6th events this year. And other things that we do know is we've had the same group of priorities the last couple of sessions. So all of the different pieces of legislation that I'm about to mention will fall under one of these three categories. So either strengthening Texas's homeless crisis response systems. We use homeless crisis response systems pretty much interchangeably with our continuums of care, just different verbiage there. Expanding affordable accessible housing opportunities, targeted intersectional assistance. Really, the largest one of this session is to play a lot of defense. Like I said before, the budget is still being completely worked out. We know that there is a shortfall. Thankfully, it's not as bad as they were initially forecasting it to be. And yeah, so a quick note on the individual bill priorities that they may change, especially as this session continues down the line. So among this first bucket, strengthening Texas's homeless crisis response systems, ending homelessness through strategic development of systems based on data-driven solutions. So I'll talk a little bit more about the importance of data and what we do as an agency. So these systems can quickly and efficiently use funding to prevent or divert households out of homelessness. So the interesting thing about this session is that the governor actually added a data sharing network to his list of budgetary priorities for this session. So that is one thing that we are hoping to continue to work with his office on. One of these bills is a data sharing network, or HB 1260. What this would do is unify the COC's access to data regarding folks who have interactions with homeless service providers throughout the state. Of course, those folks experiencing homelessness who are getting services would also have to consent to the COCs being able to pull that data. So I did want to say that, but it would also help us, especially in times of disaster, when we know that folks are more likely to move around the state a little bit more, to be able to see what services they've been receiving in other areas of the state. And then the second piece of this is relating to the continuation of existing funding to TDHCA's HHSP program. So one thing that we are looking at for this session, and it's a little bit opposite of the previous one that I just talked about, the governor has listed in his priorities that cities that do not enact a camping ban would not be eligible to receive HHSP funding. As an agency, we are not in favor of encampment bans simply because we think it's another barrier to to be able to access housing. So that's another thing that we are looking at as well. The second bucket that things are falling into is expanding affordable, accessible housing opportunities. We've heard this from our previous presenters as well. We know that housing is the most important variable in ending homelessness and preventing folks from falling into homelessness. So we must support the development and rehabilitation of more affordable housing in order to end homelessness. So lots of different things falling under this category. We have our major priority within this is looking at source of income protections, especially in a year where so many are unable to pay their rent because they've lost their wages or their jobs or their access to work because of the pandemic, and also with landlords needing to be able to receive some funding for those rental payments. Essentially, what source of income protections would do is, or the opposite of that is revoking the source of income discrimination that does exist in Texas for voucher holders. We have both there are other conservative states who have adopted these ideas as well, namely our neighbor Oklahoma, but also North Dakota. So that's something that we are looking at. I've listed a few other things here. Community land trusts are a really valuable tool, prohibiting housing discrimination, like I said, with source of income discrimination, but also on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. The eviction-related protections, it's looking like that's mostly going to fall under the federal government's oversight. So we're continuing to watch how that's going to pan out during this legislative session. Finally, like I mentioned before, targeted intersectional assistance. So we have a lot under here, but recognizing that our homeless crisis response system and those folks that society allows to be homeless are often people of color, LGBTQIA, immigrants, people with criminal histories, or disabilities. So looking at expanding healthcare access, Medicaid buy-in programs certainly would be helpful. Another bill with trauma-informed peace officer training, so trying to reduce the number of violent interactions between, or I should say escalated interactions between those on our streets and also police officers, diversion programs in terms of mental health treatment as well. And then here are some other ones as well that may be of interest to you. These aren't as high up on our list as the ones that more directly tie to our issues as an agency, but I did want to throw those out there as well. And I know that I just raced through a lot of that. Here is my contact information at the bottom. Similar to the previous presenter, the normal office phone that I use is having some issues with forwarding, so I set up a Google Voice number, so that'll go straight to my cell, this 512 number here. And I'm still here for questions if you'll have it.
You're muted, Angelique.
Sorry. Thank you so much for that, Nick. Many of us work with the homeless kind of regularly, and so a lot of this information is going to be very helpful. Does anybody have any questions? If not, you can always send them to me or send them to him, and we'll connect and get you the answer that you need.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think it's interesting with all the presenters today that, you know, housing is associated with every area. You know, it's associated with healthcare and mental health and, you know, all the different service deliveries that all of our organizations provide. So I just wanted to, you know, it just kind of struck me in Nick's presentation that housing should be a priority, or, you know, should be considered at least to be placed on a priority list for every organization, because it is, like I said, associated with so many different issues. It's just a comment. It's not really a question.
Awesome. All right. Well, if no one has any questions for Nick or any other presenter, does anyone have questions for any other presenter that's been here today? If not, and you want to promote any event that you've got coming up, does anybody have anything that they want to talk about that's going to be coming up anytime soon? Let everybody know. We got a few minutes for that. No one?
There's that Dr. Seuss event this weekend, but I don't have the.
I think Nidra, she was on earlier. I think that might be her event.
Yes, I'm here. Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
The Dr. Seuss Family Literacy event is this Saturday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. The setup for the vendors is at 1:30, and it's going to be here at the health department.
The health department between 3 and 5, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So that's it's going to be a drive-through, I think you said, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Okay, so we can make plans to attend that. And let's see. Well, let me go ahead and share our. Give me just a moment here. Well, I want to thank our presenters, Patricia, Teresa, Gina, and Nick. Y'all were so helpful. I really want to thank y'all for joining us today as well. Again, if you have any questions and you didn't get their information, but you've got mine here on the screen. If you've got anything you want to ask, if you want to get the slides, I'll be presenting those. We are recording the event, so be looking for that. I'm pretty sure by the end of the week we should have something on our website, which is on the www.gcrpc.org. And I want to thank everybody for participating, everyone who asked questions. Again, if you have any Any other questions? Anything that you think of? Maybe tomorrow you'll be like, you know what? There was that one thing that I forgot to ask. Send me an email. Give me a call and I'll get that answered for you, or any of our presenters. So again, I want to thank everyone who participated, and this will conclude our event for today. And again, I want to thank everyone who participated and joined in. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angelique. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for hosting
Thank
the
you.
event.
Have a good one.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
That was great.